Now this is going to be a little bit of a long series. This is one of those things that you just simply can't say, well, the lodge is no good, and let it go at that. You've got to take it apart. You've got to analyze it bit by bit. And so that's what we're going to do. So it's going to take us just a little bit of time. So you can allow yourself a lot of space in your notebooks. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start our tape. Okay, we need to start the tape. When I say start the tape, okay, Matthew chapter 5, we'll be there in just a little bit, an exposé of the Masonic Lodge. Now that's what we're going to study. That's going to be our subject for quite a few lessons, as I said. One of the things that we are going to do with regard to this is to tell you exactly what the Lodge teaches. And we're not going to try to malign personalities or individuals. We're not going to try to cut down people as such. All of us have family and friends that are influenced by this particular organization. Now, just let me say that it is thoroughly wicked. It is thoroughly evil. There's nothing good about the Lodge. It is not Christian. Now, it might name the name of Christ. It might have the Bible as part of its furniture, but that's it. It has nothing to do with the God of the Bible or the Son of God, Jesus Christ, as such, as he is taught and represented and given to us in the Word. Now, what we're going to do then is, based on that, observe something in an introductory fashion with regard to our community. I believe that there are at least 4 predominant religious influences that pervade our mentality, our culture here in the Evansville area, and that all of them are doctrinally incorrect, and yet they're growing by leaps and bounds. These would oppose our church, our doctrine, our teaching, what we stand for, what we believe. The first of these predominant influences is that of Catholicism. It grates my soul every time Notre Dame wins. I don't care, because that simply means that the Catholics get more free advertising and more kids who want to go to their school. Secondly, the Charismatics. The Charismatics, in one sense of the word, are just as much New Age with their mysticism, their tongue-speaking, their emphasis on the miraculous signs and wonders as the Masonic Lodge that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Except for some of them, most of them are simply in it for the emotional climaxes that they can reach in their services. That's the second group that pervades our mentality. The third group has to do with liberal churches. And I guess we could name many of them. But one of the liberal churches would be the Methodist Church. Long ago, the Methodist Church has gone by the wayside. Now, not all in the Methodist Church. There are some Wesleyan Methodists and others who would be more fundamental and more conservative in their theology that would preach a good gospel, so to speak. But for the most part, we've got in the Evansville Area Council of Churches, churches that are liberal to the core, churches that take out genders from the Bible with regard to God and their hymn books. That is sheer, unadulterated blasphemy. But of course, we have the University of Evansville that is a Methodist school. And that's why we have big Methodist churches here that are pastored by men who are members of, you guessed it, the Masonic Lodge. They are not fundamentalist pastors. These are not Bible-believing pastors for the most part. They simply are following suit with the good works program of the Lodge. And that's why I've put here, these two, the liberal churches, the Masonic Lodge, are often joined together. We had, as some could attest, a liberal church to have the Masonic Lodge and their Pied Pipers come down there. I would venture a wager, though we do not bet here. I would venture a wager that that pastor has the symbol of God on a ring on his finger. If he doesn't, he has been influenced by this group. Otherwise, he wouldn't let them inside of the doors of his church to participate in that fashion, representing this organization. If he really knew his Bible, if he really knew what they were all about, he would never have allowed them inside the doors of his church. Now, we're going to make another introductory remark here with regard to the Masonic Lodge. In our title, we have the word exposé. That's always a good word. We're going to do an exposé of the Masonic Lodge. Well, what does exposé mean? Here, the meaning is a formal disclosure. We're going to take the time to develop what this organization is all about. We're going to unveil, as it were, its secrets. And believe you me, you talk about the secrets of the soap operas. There is no organization on this planet that has more secrets than the Lodge. They will not tell them. That's part of the characteristics of the Lodge, as we're going to see. It's secrecy. So, because the Masonic Lodge is a secret order or a secret society, we're going to expose it. Now that means, again in our definition, to unveil something that was purposely concealed or kept secret. Now we unveil it to warn against potential harm and wrongdoing. Therefore, our word exposé is appropriate, especially in this case. You expose something that was concealed for the purpose of an ulterior motive, something underlying that's just not right. And we're going to bring this organization to light because it's not correct. Okay. Then, having seen this business of an exposé and that the Masonic Lodge is a secret order or society, we could add fraternity, brotherhood, institution, organization, but most of the time they're referred to as a secret order or a secret society. Many Masons would say, well, now wait a minute. All you have to do is drive downtown. If we're so secret, then how come we've got this big temple down there that says the Masonic Temple? We're not hiding anything. And I would say, you're begging the question. We're not talking about secrecy of your existence. Not at all. You are you quite maintain a high profile in the world, in the communities and so forth, especially through the shrine. You maintain this high profile so that everybody knows about you and your good works and what you do externally. No, we're not talking about the secrecy of your existence. You do exist. What we're talking about is the secrecy of what you teach. There is where we differ with you. What you teach men and women and boys and girls when you get them behind closed doors. What you teach is what we take issue with. Now, to give a few quotes here with regard to these people who join the Masonic Lodge and would say, well, there's nothing wrong with it. There's a fellow by the name of Roscoe Pound who wrote The History and Evolution of Freemasonry. And he says this: safely recognize landmarks. Now, a landmark is the Masonic word for distinctive doctrines that they teach and distinguished characteristics. So if I refer to a Masonic landmark, you know I'm talking about one of their teachings. It's what they teach. They have 25 of them, by the way. He says that these ancient landmarks are fundamental principles without which the institution could not be identified as Masonry. That comes from the Little Masonic Library. But in his book, The History and Evolution of Freemasonry, he says, safely recognize landmarks of the fraternity, number 5, is what? Secrecy. That's interesting. Why do they have to be clandestine? Ask yourself. If it's so good, why don't they tell other people? If it's so right, surely they wouldn't want to keep it to themselves. If a person had a cure for cancer, surely it would be wrong to keep it to himself and keep it a secret. Ask them, why do you keep such profound truths that are to help humanity to yourself? Albert Mackey is one of the foremost experts and leaders on the Masonic Lodge. In his book on landmarks, he says, Freemasonry is a secret society. It possesses secrets that cannot be divulged except to the initiated. Now, here's one of the neat things about Masonry. It's really neat. Before they tell you anything, you have to swear an oath. And we're going to get into that oath in just a little bit. You have to swear an oath that you can expect to die. The interesting thing is, who's going to put you to death? Oh, yes. One of your brother Masons who finds out that you did this, you swear an oath upon penalty of death. But who's going to put you to death? One of your brother Masons. What is that? Murder. It's okay, says the Masonic Lodge, to put a brother to death for exposing the secrets of Masonry. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Now, also in his book on the landmarks of Masonry, Mackey says, no visitor is allowed into a Masonic Lodge without undergoing examination. And he also says, landmark number 25, that the landmarks of Masonry can never be changed. Therefore, Freemasonry is a secret society. It can never be changed, and these landmarks are absolute. It's what they believe. If they change them, then Freemasonry is no longer what it really is supposed to be. Albert Pike is another one who is a leader and one who has formulated their teaching. He says in his book on Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. And I like this because they always have great big titles, the Grand Poobah of the High Potentate and the Worshipful Master and all of this business and so forth. But Albert Pike, in his book on Morals and Dogma for Masons, says secrecy is indispensable to a Mason of whatever degree. Now, the degree, of course, is his rank. And you can go, when you enter in degree 1, you can go from there all the way to the highest, or 33rd degree. It's from there that we split. All right? John Sheville, again in a book on his encyclopedic book on the Guide to the Royal Arch chapter, he says, the first obligation of a Mason, his supreme duty, his chief virtue, is that of silence and secrecy. If any of these fellows were Christians, it'd be interesting to ask them, how come we're supposed to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature? That certainly doesn't sound like silence to me. If we're interested in helping others with the good news of Christ, then how come our virtue is we can't get Christians to open up and tell the truth? That's what we're supposed to do. That's evangelism. Tell others of Christ. But they say, no. We don't want to reveal what's going on behind those closed doors. So the first supreme duty, chief virtue, is silence and secrecy. Everything is under the cover of covert operations. Now, the conclusion, therefore, that we have is simply this. Secrecy is one of the foremost features and requirements of the Masonic Lodge. If you're going to be a Mason, the very first thing you have to settle in your mind is that you're going to keep quiet about what goes on there. You have to swear an oath, as I said, under penalty of death, that you will prepare to die if you divulge one secret of the Masons. Okay, now let's just go, as we're in Matthew chapter 5, to the biblical refutation of the very foremost characteristic of this group. Matthew chapter 5. Point number one, the whole purpose of Christianity is to reveal, not conceal, the truth or light of God's Word. It's to be given to the whole world, not to just a few people. So, I can tell you right now, should a Christian ever belong to the Masonic Lodge? No. Why? Because he cannot swear before God to conceal the truth. He can't do it. He cannot say before God, I won't tell the truth so others might be helped and saved. The very premise on which this group joins together in their brotherhood, the bond that cements them together, secrecy, is the very first thing we're going to attack. And that is, if you're a Christian, you've got to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. 14 rather, Matthew 5. You're the light of the world. City that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel. See, that's what they're doing. The Masons are saying, I've got a candle that gives men light, and I've lit it, but I'm going to put it under a candle so it can't benefit just anybody. Only those who get under the bushel with me. That's nonsense. If it's truth and it will help an individual, tell the truth and help them. But on a candlestick, and it gives light into all that are in the house. Let your light shine before men. Everybody, you see. Mark 4. Mark 4. Mark 4. 21. Jesus said unto them, Is a candle brought to be put under a bushel, under a bed, and not to be set on a candlestick? Answer, no. It's lit to help others see the light, to make manifest. There is nothing hid that shall not be made manifested. Neither was anything kept secret, but that it should come abroad. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear. That's not silence. That's not secrecy. That's telling openly. Luke 8. Very quickly here. Verse 16, no man when he hath lighted a candle covers it with a vessel, puts it under a bed, but sets it on a candlestick, that they which enter in may see the light. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifested, neither is anything hid that shall not be made known. God wants us to tell the truth. He doesn't want us to keep our lips silent. And again, the Apostle Paul says in Philippians 2:18 that, in effect, we're to let our light shine in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. John 18, let's go to point 2. Jesus Christ taught openly to the world. That's the second part of our biblical refutation. Verse 19, the high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the world. You see, the Masonic Lodge is built on the order of the Solomonic Temple. They say that it's the Temple of Solomon, and parts of it are biblical, but the rest of it is mythical. But they go back to the Temple of Solomon, and what they're telling us is, you enter the Temple of Solomon, and you keep your mouth shut about what goes on back there. Jesus Christ said, I spake openly to the world. When I taught in the synagogue and when in the temple. Jesus Christ was not a Mason, and he would never be. Why? Because when he went in the temple, he told the truth. And then in other churches, the synagogues, and then to the world, everybody knew what he stood for. He didn't keep it quiet. That's the point. Whether the Jews always resort in secret, he said, I have said nothing. He said, why do you ask me? Ask them which heard me. They'll witness of me. What I said to them, they know what I said. And that's the point. He told the world the truth. Point 3, Matthew 10. Let's go back to Matthew 10. The Bible teaches that Christ's disciples, in whatever dispensation, should follow his example in this regard. Matthew 10. Chapter 10, verse 26 and verse 27. Fear them not therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be made known. What I tell you in darkness, in other words, he's talking about, okay, we've met together and the world was not there, but I taught, but it was not for the purpose of keeping it to ourselves. What I told you in darkness, speak in the light. What you hear in the ear, preach upon the housetops. Not keep it silent, but if you're a disciple of mine, go and tell the truth. We're in a small group, okay, fine. But go out there and tell what we do. We don't have anything to hide. All right. Point 4. Let's turn to Ephesians 5. Ephesians 5. Should a Christian join the Masonic Lodge? Answer, no. And if you are a Christian and you're in one, you should leave. It's called a demit. But point 4 is, as far as the Word of God is concerned, Christians are forbidden to participate in secret societies. You can't be like Christ and speak openly about what goes on in your church, in your organization, and under oath, on penalty of death, swear not to tell what goes on and to divulge the secrets. Verse 7 of Ephesians 5, Be not ye therefore partakers with them. For ye were sometimes in darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable to the Lord. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it's a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them. Note the last two words, in secret. Jesus said, in secret I have spoke nothing. Paul says, in the mystery cults, which is what the Masonic Lodge is, it's the ancient Eastern mystical cults that Jehovah God has fought with against since the dawn of time. The Masonic Lodge is one of those cults. It is the most prevalent New Age cult in the world today, and you are influenced by it. You say, Pastor, how am I influenced by it? They've got a hidden agenda. The Illuminati, Illuminists, the Enlighteners, who are those people? Masons. That's exactly who they are. They're people in Western Europe who are Masons, and Masons are in charge of the world's banking systems, who will bring this world to its knees one day with the mark of the beast. And Masons are the ones doing it. Now, many of them, and I will explain this, that belong simply to what's called the Blue Lodge. We'll talk about that in a minute. Don't know that that's what they're doing. You have to get up in the degrees before you understand what it's all about. But those who are in the lower levels of the lodge, who work for the lodge and their own salvation, who attempt to get money for the lodge, are funding people like the Illuminati for world domination of finances and a religious oneness. Note what Paul says in verse 10, prove what is acceptable to the Lord. That's what we're doing here. Remove, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. Reprove, but rather reprove them. That is our exposé. We prove what's right. Many of the Masons use the Masonic Lodge as their church. That's what they do. They go to church there. That's their religion. Instead of coming to a Bible teaching church like that. You see, on Wednesday night, the lodge will have, a lot of people down there. Especially because they'll feed them and they'll go through their little rituals and so forth. But that's not right. They should be in church. Remove yourself from it. Have no fellowship with them. And reprove them. That's what we're doing. That's the exposé. All right? Romans 12:7, point 5. A Christian is to provide things honest in the sight of all men. We'll just read the verse quickly. Last part of verse 17 says, recompense to no man evil for evil, provide things honest in the sight of all men. Now, how in the world can you keep it secret if you're to provide it honest? How in the world can you have a double meaning to everything in the lodge? Before this study is over, you're going to be amazed. I'll just give you a little, for instance here. They have a compass coming down this way and a square going up this way with light emanating all around it and a big word G in there. Wonder what that G is for? Well, we'll find out. If you were to ask a Mason, and you're a non-Mason, you're uninitiated, they will tell you it means one thing. But when you get up in the degrees, you're going to find out that that G means something altogether different. And that in essence, that G stands for what the Masons are, a phallic cult. That's exactly what they are. And that G stands for the male phallus. That's exactly what they worship. That's exactly the purpose and that's exactly the secret word that Hiram Abiff lost, but substituted. We're going to see that. That's what that is. And that picture there is a picture of human sexuality. It's a phallic cult. It has nothing to do with the God of the Bible. All right, 2 more points here before we move on. Deuteronomy 13. Deuteronomy 13. Point 6, secrecy is most often a tactic of the wicked. If a brother, son of thy mother, your son or daughter, wife of thy bosom or friend, which is as thine own soul, entice thee, note the word, secretly. Now the enticement here was to go after other gods. Let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, nor thy fathers, namely the gods of the people which are round about you. Now, Baal, Molech, Ashtaroth, all of these deities were different names for the same God. And it's the same God that the Masons worship. Osiris, the sun god, the one who has regenerative or generative powers. Same God, not Jehovah, not Jesus Christ. And they worshiped him through phallic rituals, concealed in these various symbols. If they entice you secretly, hey, we'll go to the temple and worship Jehovah, but when we get into the tent, we'll set up a phallic idol and we'll worship sexually. Thou shalt not consent unto him, and hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him. Don't keep it secret if he wants to entice you secretly. But thou shalt surely kill him. Of course, in the dispensation of grace, we can't kill all the Masons. Though we might want to knock off one or two, they wouldn't hesitate. Thine hand shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. You'll stone him with stones, thrust him away from thee, because he's the God that brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Now that's interesting, because the God of Freemasonry is Osiris, the sun god, the head deity of the Egyptians. Do you ever wonder why the Shriners have Arabic symbols? It's because it goes back to Egypt. That's why. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more wickedness among you. Psalms 10. Let's hurry, because I want to get to the organizational chart that we have. Psalms 10. Secret places are most often dens of iniquity. Why do you have to keep them secret? Psalm 10, we'll not read all of those. We'll go down to verse number 7. His mouth is full of cursing. He uses God's name, you see, but at the one and the same time, it's actually the name of a false god that he's representing. Deceit, he's not telling the truth. And fraud, his tongue is mischief and vanity. He tells you he's religious and is going to help you, but at one and the same time, he is sending your soul to hell. He sits in the lurking places, in the secret places does he murder the innocent. Don't tell anybody what's going on. Reminds me of some of the movie stars with their liaisons with the little ones. You know, don't tell anybody what's going on behind these closed doors. His eyes are privately set against the poor. He lies in wait secretly as a lion in the den. Our contention is that Masonic temples are dens of iniquity, and that those who are part of these organizations, maybe unknowingly, with some of them, but undoubtedly well known to those in the higher echelons, they know exactly what they're doing in entrapping men's souls in Masonic teaching, which they believe will bring salvation to the world, not the Bible and not Jesus Christ. Reasons for Masonic secrecy. Very quickly here, then we want to get to the organizational chart. One, to appeal to man's curious nature. Listen to Let There Be Light, a Masonry book by Alphonse Sersa. The secrecy of our ceremonies of initiation are intended to meet a natural human characteristic. What is open is often overlooked, but what is hidden attracts attention. It is hoped that new members, because of the element of secrecy and interest in discovering what it's all about, will come to the meeting with an alert mind, giving the matter greater attention than he otherwise would do if he knew what it was all about. That's why they want secrecy. Curious to know what's going on. What's happening behind those closed doors? How can I know? Makes them feel big to have some knowledge that other people do not have. Superior. It's an appeal to the ego. Secondly, to control and bring stability to the lodge by fear. Listen to the first degree, entered apprentice oath. I do hereby and hereon most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will always, ever conceal and never reveal any secret art, part, or points of the hidden mysteries of ancient Freemasonry, which have been heretofore, at this time, revealed to me. I shall not, or may at this time, shall at any future period communicate. Let me go back. At any future period, be communicated to me as such. I will not reveal it now, and I will not in the future reveal any secret communicated to me as such to any person, persons, whomsoever. If you're a Mason, you can't tell your wife what really goes on. Binding myself under no less penalty than that of having my throat cut across. Who's going to do that if you tell? Brother Mason, what's he going to do? Murder you. Cutthroats is what they are. Intimidators. My tongue torn out by its roots. Every Mason you know has said this oath before he had one thing revealed to him. Buried in the rough sands of the sea at low water mark where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours. Should I ever knowingly or willingly, this my solemn oath and obligation as an entered apprentice Mason, so help me God. You can't tell, or they're going to kill you. Have they killed people? Yes, they have. Now, we don't have time to go into all of that, but most certainly they have. Thirdly, to covertly promote its own liberal political agenda. H.L. Haywood, in his great teachings of Masonry, says this: Masonry is a world law destined to change the earth into conformity with itself. Your one world order is the by phrase of Masons. Every time our presidents have gotten up, New World Order, it's because they have a direct line back to Masons. Masons have a building in Washington, D.C. Masons were some of the founding fathers of our country, to our shame. Change the earth into conformity with itself, and as a world power is godlike. Masons show favoritism to other Masons in politics, in business, and so forth. Now, they have their own liberal, global political agenda. The New World Order is the phrase of the Illuminati to bring global peace, harmony all over the earth. All right, now, for the last few moments that we have, let's look at an organizational chart of the Masons. I've eliminated some of the writing with regard to the names of some of the degrees as trying to save your wee little paws on this matter. The organizational chart. The Mother Lodge, the Foundational Lodge, the one that every Mason has to go through. You do not become a bona fide Mason unless you go through the Blue Lodge of the first 3 degrees. The degrees are, number 1, entered apprentice. You just heard his oath. If I tell it, I'll have my throat cut and my tongue torn out and buried in the rough part of the sea, where every 24 hours the waters will cover it with sand and go back out again. I'll tell you what, that's a pretty awesome thing. That's fear. That's control by fear and intimidation. Go ahead and tell. We'll cut your tongue out. The second degree is called fellow craft. Now, each of these has an oath by which you seal the degree. Each of them is increasingly gruesome. It's one thing to have your tongue cut out. If you're a fellow craft and master mason, you have your heart cut out. We'll get to that later on. All right. These 3 are your foundational degrees. Most Masons only go to 3. There are reasons for this: time, money. It costs to be a Mason. Most Masons who go up to the 33 degree will have spent a lot of money in their Masonic Lodge, and I'll bet you very little of it has gone to the church, that they claim Christ as their Savior and Lord and so forth. Okay, once you get through the first 3 degrees, and that's every Mason has to do it, you have to become a Master Mason. You can then stay there and work in the Blue Lodge for the rest of your life. And we're going to find out next time what the Blue Lodge is all about. Why it's blue. That's interesting. Now, the next thing that you want to do is you want to join one of the rites. The Scottish Rite on the one hand, or the York Rite on the other. The Scottish Rite has the rest of the degrees up to 32. Now, at this point, as a 32nd degree Mason, you can do one of 2 things, or both. You can be recruited for the shrine, or you can continue on for your 33rd degree, but it's a little bit more difficult and so forth. But you have to go through all 32 before you can take that last and final step in your onward search to light and cosmic consciousness. Well, you say, Pastor, that is a New Age term. Yes, that's right, because the Masonic Lodge is New Age oriented through and through. That is their main goal. The light is cosmic consciousness. And much of the New Age propaganda that we have in our schools and everywhere else clandestinely comes from the undermining and the promoting of the Masonic Lodge. Now, you can become a 33rd degree Mason, go to Washington, D.C., and pick up your certificates, or you can become one of the party animals of the Masonic Lodge, the Shriner, the AAO and MS boys. What's that stand for? The Ancient Arabic Order of the Noble Mystic Shrine? Well, who's the Noble Mystic Shrine to? Osiris, the god of the Egyptians. Or Allah. Because when you join the shrine, do you know who you have to call as your father spiritually? Allah. You don't say in the name of Christ, I swear these things. You say in the name of Allah, our Father. That is blasphemous. And anybody who's ever joined the shrine has said, I give this oath in the name of Allah, our Father. Now, you can also go to the York Rite. This is supposed to be the Christian side of it. It's nonsense. It goes all the way back to the Crusaders, who were less than Christian. If they understood dispensationalism, they wouldn't have tried to capture Jerusalem as the capital city of their religion. We don't go back to Jerusalem, but because they were dispensationally incorrect, they went back to Jerusalem to capture the holy city for all Christendom. You can go through their first 10 degrees, and then their 11th degree, the highest, is Templar Commandery, the Knights of the Temple in Jerusalem. Okay? Now, let's close off with the last minutes that we have of giving you some other related organizations to the shrine. We just have a few moments. I just want to let you know if you might be interested. The Fraternal Orders, the Fraternal Order of the Eagles, shrine. That's where Mason, that's where it's come from. The Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks, the Loyal Order of the Moose, and all their little meese. The Independent Order of the Odd Fellows, the Woodsmen of the World, the Acacia Fraternity. What's the acacia tree? The evergreen tree. Christmas, looking under the tree for blessing. The mystic Eastern religions had the acacia or the pine tree. Hiram Abiff was buried under a pine tree. They went under the pine tree for the resurrected regenerative power of Hiram. We say, Pastor, who's Hiram? The central figure, the savior of the Masons, not Jesus Christ. The grotto, we've got one of those down in town. Ever wonder what that is? It's Phallic Society. They have some other organizations for the females. We can't leave them out, and so we've got the Daughters of the Now. You know what one of the Queen of the Now, you know who she represents? Isis, the wife of Osiris. Mighty Isis. Order of Amaranth. That almost sounds like a health food. Amaranth is health food too. Okay. The male youth, 17 through 21, the Order of Demolay. I used to go to Demolay dances with a friend of mine. I'll not give his name, but we'd go there because it was the most promiscuous dance. It was worse than some of the pothead dances we went to. It was. Female youth, Order of Job's Daughters, and the Order of the Rainbow Girls. Churches that they have influenced predominantly, aside from the liberal churches, Mormonism and the Unitarian Universalist churches, because that's what they are in doctrine, Unitarian.